You know you need good research in your writing, but what exactly does good mean? And how do you go and find this stuff? Howdy, hey folks, today's Wednesday Word is all about vetting the best research for your articles. And we know that if you want to make a point in writing, it always helps to have something else there to back it up. Yet this piece often gets skipped in the writing preparation process. We don't really spend enough time researching our topic and understanding the nuances around it. This results in two big issues. One, we don't know where our viewpoint sits amongst others in the industry. And two, we don't show consensus around ideas within our pieces. So the end result is our ideas get isolated in the world of ideas, and they don't really make the impact we want them to. When people look for thought leadership these days, they're looking to see that your point makes sense in the larger context of what others are talking about. If you're not clear on where your idea sits in that pool and how it relates to other concepts and ideas, you're going to miss out on capturing some key pieces of that audience. That said, researching well is really tricky. There's a lot of crap out there, and bad research can sink your idea before it ever gets to take flight. So where do you begin? So we'll start with statistics. And everyone loves statistics. It's great addition to have in pieces. The important piece, though, with statistics is checking your sources, understanding where stats come from, and how you can use them in your pieces. So typically, when I'm writing content or having other folks write content, I like at least 2 verified statistical sources in each article. But as you start niching down your content and looking for other places to grab those stats, you can start running into some really interesting places. One of these that pops up a lot are companies that run their own research and publish them as some form of gated content. It's not to say that's bad necessarily, but you need to dig in and understand a couple key pieces behind that research to know if you can use it effectively in your content. 2 things I always look for in these company-led research articles are how big was this study? So you're looking for the sample size, or N. Typically anything with an N less than 100, that means less than 100 people in the survey pool, is not going to be statistically significant. That's not enough to really affirm or support any kind of point. And the other piece is, do they publish their methodology? So normally in any kind of research report, you're going to have some listing of what actually took place as part of the research survey. So if they skip over that part, or it's really kind of shady, you don't really understand what's going on, then this data probably wasn't gathered in a way that's going to be really statistically significant or useful for you in your content. And most often you're going to run into company-based research reports when you're really niching down. So if you're really specific within, let's say, fintech within B2B SaaS, only so many places you're going to find relevant statistics. And I get that. Again, just be cautious with it. When in doubt, go to analyst firms like Deloitte, Gartner, or McKinsey. There can still be some sample bias in there, so make sure you read what they're putting out and read carefully. But they're usually more authoritative sources that people recognize and boosts your confidence level in the pieces that you're writing. Along this vein, we also need to set some good standards for research to include in pieces to begin with. Because there's so much out there, and on the internet, time is a flat circle, it's really hard to sometimes recognize when information or research is extremely outdated or doesn't really pertain to the topic you want to talk about at hand. Some of the key research boundaries I place with some of the teams I've worked with in the past are: don't use articles that are more than 2 years old. Statistics should be from the past 18 months at most. Link back to the primary source whenever possible. Try not to link to a competitor's content. This is important if you're writing for ghostwriting. You don't necessarily want to highlight your competitor's awesome research report in the client you're writing for. That tends to get people kind of PO'd. Also, don't link to landing pages, ebook downloads, content gates. Publications don't like to see that either. And you're also not linking back to what is probably going to be best for SEO purposes for your client either. So if you've got company-specific research you're highlighting, actually highlight the report, not the download page to get to it. Tracking domain authority through a tool like Moz can help with some of this. That said, trade pubs and niche sites are probably going to be relatively lower on that DA scale than something like a top tier, but they're still valuable resources. Again, this is just what's going to happen as you niche down your topic. But you know where the premier trade publications in your industry or niche are. If you don't, start researching that immediately. But these are going to be places too where you can find relevant information and resources to help you research and prove out your point. Now, something a lot of folks are tempted to do is research just their own viewpoints. They start cherry picking the favorite stats that back up the point they want to make to begin with in an article and leave it at that. But if you really want to position your piece as something that is actually taking a leadership stance, you need to understand the other viewpoints, including the directly confrontational oppositional viewpoints within that body of research. For example, with all the generative AI stuff going on right now, maybe you don't feel as strongly that generative AI fits well within a marketing workflow today. You can still acknowledge what others are saying about how they've successfully included it in a marketing strategy or in a marketing workflow, but then use some of those use cases to help talk about your stance on it from that perspective. That produces fuller, more interesting content and shows you're paying attention to what's actually happening in the space, which is a key flag that people look for when they're looking for leadership in the content they're reading. I think that's the key difference between a piece of content trying to sell me something and a piece of content actually saying something valuable about the industry. Speaking of generative AI, AI tools can help with vetting research, but be very, very, very careful with the results you're getting from those right now. We've been seeing more news coming out of folks using GPT a little too liberally, and that's resulted in some really disastrous situations for the folks who trusted generative AI without vetting what it was telling them. You can ask these tools to do some of that research or start looking around for sources that might be interesting. That said, when you actually type the prompt, make sure you ask GPT or whatever tool you're using to specifically cite what it's talking about. And that usually should pop up with whatever links it's going back to. Again, follow those links, don't just trust it. Put those links in the browser, follow them through, and see where they go. 5 minutes there is gonna save you a giant, hours-long headache later on. Consensus AI is one that's been popping up recently. This will go through all that peer-reviewed information out there and then compile much the same way GPT does with a splash of like a Google search page. It's actually a really useful tool if you're looking for those really specific peer-reviewed studies, which can really elevate a piece if you find some good stuff. Good research takes time, and I think folks, because they run out of time, just kind of leave this off to the wayside. Vetted research can really back up an argument and make a really strong case for whatever topic you're talking about, whether it's yours or clients or your company's. As Google and other search engines start pushing more for expertise and authority, look up EAT right now. These are the kinds of little touches added to good articles that are going to get things elevated to the top of search rankings. And when it comes time to buying something, they're going to look to you because they can trust your expertise and your authority in the space and know that you're helping them actually solve the problem at hand instead of just selling a solution because you have to. That's today's topic on research. Again, like always, like, comment, watch some more videos. But always good to chat about what's happening in the content world. Feel free to send me any questions too about good research strategies. We might do some more videos on this topic in the future, so would love to hear other pieces that you'd like to know more about. But that's it, gang. Great to see you. We'll see you next Wednesday for the next Wednesday Word.